The world tells you to go out, be social, stay busy, as if noise equals life. But some people have seen too much of that lie. They retreat, not because they're weak, but because they've learned silence is power and peace is rebellion. The question is, are you escaping the world or mastering it? Because once you've seen how loud the world has become, you start realizing something darker. People don't chase noise because they love it. They chase it because they're terrified of what happens when it stops. That's where it all begins, the lie of constant motion. We live in a civilization obsessed with movement. From the moment you wake up, the world demands you to be somewhere, do something, meet someone. Social media glorifies the busy life, the person with endless plans, countless connections, a calendar packed with events. The underlying message is clear. If you're not moving, you're dying. If you're not networking, you're falling behind. If you're staying home, you're wasting your life. The world equates movement with meaning. But here's the part they don't tell you. Most people aren't moving forward. They're running in circles, running from boredom, running from silence, running from the one thing they fear most, themselves. Because when you stop moving, when the noise fades, when you're finally alone, that's when the real confrontation begins. Solitude exposes who you really are. It strips away the masks, the performance, the constant need to prove yourself to others. And for most people, that exposure is terrifying. So they keep moving. They keep filling their lives with noise, not because it adds value, but because it drowns out the questions they're afraid to answer. Who am I without the crowd? What do I truly want? What have I been avoiding? The truth is, constant motion is not a sign of vitality. It's often a symptom of avoidance. Think about it. How many people do you know who can't sit still for 5 minutes without checking their phone? Who can't spend an evening alone without feeling anxious? Who define their worth by how many people they know, how many events they attend, how busy their schedule looks? These people have been conditioned to believe that their value comes from external validation, that they only matter if someone else confirms it. That silence means loneliness, and loneliness means failure. But this is the greatest lie modern society has sold us. The idea that you need constant stimulation, constant connection, constant activity to feel alive. The truth is the opposite. Real vitality comes from knowing yourself so deeply that you don't need the world to tell you who you are. Real strength comes from being able to sit in silence and feel at peace. Real power comes from choosing when to engage and when to withdraw, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. And that's what most people don't understand about those who prefer solitude. They're not running away. They're running towards something deeper, something the noise of the world could never provide. Now, not everyone who stays home is the same. There are different reasons, different psychologies, different paths that lead to solitude. And understanding which type you are is the first step to mastering it rather than being consumed by it. Let me break down the 4 archetypes. Type 1, the wounded survivor. Some people didn't choose solitude. Life pushed them there. Maybe they were burned by toxic relationships, betrayed by people they trusted, exhausted by environments that demanded too much and gave too little. Maybe they worked in a corporate job that sucked their soul dry. Maybe they had friends who only showed up when they needed something. Maybe they loved someone who turned out to be wearing a mask the entire time. For them, staying home isn't laziness. It's survival. It's the instinct to retreat when the battlefield becomes unbearable. They don't fear the world. They fear the damage it can do. So they create distance. Not out of weakness, but out of self-preservation. Home becomes their refuge. A place where they can heal without pretending to be okay. Where they can drop the armor and just breathe. And here's the thing. Solitude, for the wounded survivor, is like medicine. It's bitter, it's uncomfortable, but it saves them. In that quiet space, away from judgment and expectation, they begin to rebuild. They learn to trust themselves again. They rediscover their boundaries, their values, their sense of self. The wounded survivor uses solitude as a hospital, a place to treat wounds that the world refuses to acknowledge. Because society doesn't give you time to heal. It tells you to keep going, keep smiling, keep performing, even when you're bleeding inside. But the wounded survivor knows better. They know that pushing through without healing only makes the damage permanent. So they step back. They give themselves permission to recover. And slowly, in that space of solitude, they begin to piece themselves back together. Not the same as before. Better, stronger, more aware of who deserves access to their energy. The wounded survivor doesn't hide from the world forever. They retreat to gather strength. And when they return fortified. Not naive anymore, not defenseless, but wiser, sharper, and far more selective about who they let in. They've learned the hard lesson that not everyone deserves a seat at your table, that some people are energy vampires disguised as friends, that protecting your peace sometimes means closing the door on people you once loved, and they're okay with that, because they've realized something profound. Being alone is better than being surrounded by people who make you feel alone. Type 2, the true introvert. Then there's the introvert. And no, I'm not talking about someone who's just shy or awkward in social settings. I'm talking about people whose energy operates on a different frequency. They don't fear people. They fear losing themselves among them. For the true introvert, social interaction is a transaction. It costs energy. Every conversation, every event, every crowd drains their internal battery. And here's what extroverts often misunderstand. This isn't a flaw. It's just how they're wired. Introverts process the world internally. They think deeply before they speak. They observe before they engage. And they need time alone to recharge, not because they hate people, but because solitude is where they feel most aligned with themselves. Home, for the introvert, is not a hiding place. It's a sanctuary, a place where they don't have to perform, where they don't have to manage how they're perceived, where they can exist without the constant pressure to be on. Think about what it's like for an introvert to go to a party. They walk in and immediately feel the weight of expectation, the need to smile, to make small talk, to seem interested in conversations that feel shallow and meaningless. They scan the room and calculate how long they need to stay before they can politely leave without seeming rude. Every interaction is draining, not because they dislike the people, but because the environment itself is exhausting. The noise, the chaos, the constant switching between different social masks, and then they finally get home. They close the door, take off the mask, and exhale. That's when they feel like themselves again. That's when the world makes sense. Introverts choose quality over quantity. A few deep connections over 100 shallow ones. One meaningful conversation over 10 surface-level exchanges. And they're perfectly okay with that. The world might call them antisocial. But the truth is, they're just selective. They understand that their energy is finite, and they refuse to waste it on people or situations that don't align with who they are. They've learned that saying no to 100 mediocre connections opens up space for the 5 extraordinary ones. That depth beats breadth every single time, and they've stopped apologizing for it. They don't need to justify why they'd rather stay home and read a book than go to a crowded bar, why they prefer one-on-one coffee meetings over group hangouts, why they need a day of silence after a weekend of socializing. Because they know themselves, and they honor that knowledge instead of fighting it. The true introvert has made peace with their nature. They're not trying to become extroverted. They're not forcing themselves to enjoy things that drain them. They've simply accepted that they operate differently, and that's not a weakness. It's a superpower, because while everyone else is scattered across 100 shallow interactions, the introvert is building something deep. Deep thoughts, deep relationships, deep understanding. And in a world obsessed with breadth, depth is revolutionary. Type 3, the creative hermit. Now, let's talk about the creators, the writers, the artists, the thinkers, the builders. For them, isolation isn't escape, it's incubation. Creativity doesn't thrive in chaos. It needs silence. It needs space. It needs the absence of external noise so that internal ideas can rise to the surface. Think about some of the greatest works of art, literature, philosophy. Most of them were born in solitude, in quiet rooms, in moments of deep focus, away from the distractions of the world. Hemingway wrote in the early morning hours when the world was still asleep. Emily Dickinson rarely left her house, yet she produced some of the most profound poetry in history. Tesla spent countless hours alone in his laboratory, channeling ideas that seemed to come from another dimension. Because creation requires concentration. It requires you to dive deep into your thoughts, your emotions, your vision, and you can't do that when you're constantly interrupted by the demands of social life. The creative hermit understands this instinctively. They don't see staying home as missing out. They see it as the only way to tap into their full potential. Home becomes their laboratory, their studio, their workshop. It's where they experiment, fail, refine, and eventually produce something that didn't exist before. Let me explain the creative process from a hermit's perspective. When you're constantly surrounded by people, your mind is always reacting. Reacting to conversation, reacting to expectations, reacting to the energy of others. But creativity doesn't come from reaction. It comes from deep, uninterrupted contemplation. It comes from following a thread of thought for hours without being pulled away. It comes from entering a flow state where time disappears and you're completely absorbed in the work. And you can't enter that state if your phone is buzzing every 5 minutes. If people are knocking on your door, if you're worried about social obligations. The creative hermit has learned to protect their creative time like it's sacred. Because it is. They've realized that the world will always demand their attention. But their art, their ideas, their unique contribution that only happens in solitude. So they withdraw, not because they're antisocial, but because they're protecting something valuable. They're protecting the space where inspiration can breathe. And here's the paradox. By withdrawing from the world, they often end up giving the world something far more valuable than their presence at a party. They give it their work, their ideas, their contribution, a book that changes someone's life, a painting that makes someone feel less alone, a piece of music that captures an emotion words can't describe, a business that solves a real problem. The creative hermit doesn't need constant validation. They're not creating for likes or followers or applause. They're driven by an internal compass, a voice inside that says, this needs to exist. And solitude is the environment where that compass points true north, where the signal is clear and the path is obvious. The creative hermit knows that genius is quiet, that real innovation happens away from the spotlight, that the best ideas don't come from brainstorming sessions in conference rooms. They come from long walks alone, from staring out windows, from 3 a.m. thoughts that you have to write down before they disappear. And they've accepted that most people won't understand this. People will ask them why they're always alone, why they turn down the invitation, why they seem distant. And the creative hermit will smile and give a polite answer. But inside, they know the truth. They're not distant, they're focused. And that focus is producing something the world doesn't even know it needs yet. Type 4, the observer of chaos. Finally, there's the observer. These are the people who aren't afraid of the world. They're just allergic to its chaos. They watch how people behave in groups, how conversations devolve into noise, how energy becomes scattered, unfocused, draining, how drama multiplies exponentially when humans gather, how gossip spreads like wildfire, how superficiality becomes the default mode of interaction. And they make a conscious decision. I don't want that. For the observer, staying home isn't about fear. It's about control. Control over their environment, control over their mental inputs, control over the kind of energy they allow into their space. They understand that peace is a luxury. And in a world addicted to drama, conflict, and endless stimulation, peace is revolutionary. The observer has developed a keen sense of discern. They can walk into a room and immediately feel the energy. They can sense tension, insincerity, hidden agendas. They notice the micro-expressions, the tone shifts, the unspoken dynamics, and they realize this is exhausting, not because they can't handle it, but because they've calculated the cost-benefit ratio and realized it doesn't add up. Most social gatherings are high cost, low reward. You spend hours getting ready, commuting, making small talk, pretending to care about things you don't care about. And for what? A few minutes of genuine connection, if you're lucky. A hangover and regret if you're not. The observer opts out. Not out of superiority, not out of fear, but out of simple mathematics. Their time is valuable, their energy is finite, and they refuse to waste either on situations that drain more than they give. The observer doesn't need to prove they're social. They don't need to justify their choices. They've simply realized that most social settings drain more than they give, and they'd rather spend their time in ways that align with their values. their goals, their mental clarity. Home, for the observer, is not a cage. It's a fortress, a place where they curate their reality instead of being swept up in someone else's chaos. They choose what they read, what they watch, what they think about. They're not bombarded by other people's opinions, problems, drama. They're not forced to care about things that don't matter to them. They've created an environment of intentionality. Every input is chosen. Every stimulus is deliberate. And in that curated space, their mind becomes sharp, focused, clear. The observer has realized something that most people never figure out. You are the average of the environments you expose yourself to. If you constantly surround yourself with chaos, you become chaotic. If you constantly expose yourself to negativity, you become negative. If you constantly engage with surface-level interactions, you become shallow. But if you protect your environment, if you guard what enters your mind, if you choose peace over noise, you become something rare. You become clear, focused, intentional, powerful, and they're unapologetic about it. Because they know autonomy over your mind is the highest form of power. The world can't manipulate you if you control the inputs. Advertising can't influence you if you limit your exposure. Drama can't drain you if you refuse to participate. The observer has taken back control, and once you've experienced that level of mental autonomy, you can never go back to the chaos. You can never unsee how much energy you were wasting, how much clarity you were sacrificing, how much of your life was being lived on autopilot, reacting to whatever the world threw at you. The observer has woken up, and they've made a choice. I'd rather be alone and at peace than surrounded and stressed. But here's where things get dangerous, because peace and isolation are separated by a thread, a very thin thread. And if you're not careful, you can slip from one into the other without even noticing. Solitude can heal you. It can sharpen your mind, restore your energy, give you clarity. But solitude, when taken too far, can also bury you. Stay alone too long, and the silence that once brought peace starts to amplify the noise inside your head. Overthinking, rumination, self-doubt, anxiety. Your mind, in the absence of external stimulation, begins to create its own chaos. And before you know it, you're not retreating to recharge anymore. You're retreating because you've forgotten how to engage. You've become comfortable in the cocoon, and comfort, when unchecked, becomes stagnation. This is the trap that many people fall into. They start by seeking peace. They end up in paralysis. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like. At first, you stay home because you need to recharge. You're tired from work, from people, from the constant demands of life. So you take a weekend to yourself, and it feels amazing. You read books, you think deeply, you reconnect with yourself. You remember what it feels like to not be performing for anyone. So you do it again the next weekend, and the next, and slowly, without realizing it, staying home becomes your default. You start declining invitations automatically, not because you've evaluated whether you want to go, but because saying no has become your pattern. Your comfort zone expands to fill your living room, and anything outside of it starts to feel threatening. You tell yourself you're protecting your peace, but really, you're avoiding discomfort. You're not choosing solitude strategically. You're hiding. And here's how you know the difference. Ask yourself what you're building during your solitude. Are you creating something? Learning something? Healing something? Processing something? Or are you just consuming, scrolling, watching, numbing, avoiding? If your solitude has no purpose, no direction, no growth, it's not solitude. It's stagnation disguised as self-care. Machiavelli once wrote, "Power unused decays." And the same applies to solitude. Solitude is a tool, a powerful one. But if you treat it as a destination instead of a process, it stops serving you and starts controlling you. The same silence that heals you can also bury you. The same isolation that gives you clarity can also lock you in a prison of your own making. Think about muscles. When you rest them, they grow stronger. But if you rest them too long, they atrophy. The same principle applies to your social capacity, your confidence, your ability to navigate the world. If you withdraw to heal and sharpen yourself, you'll return stronger. But if you withdraw indefinitely, you'll find that re-engaging becomes harder and harder. Your social skills rust. your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. Your world becomes smaller and smaller until you're trapped in a comfort zone that feels more like a cage. And that's the thin line. That's the edge you need to be aware of. Because the goal isn't to stay home forever. The goal is to use solitude to become stronger, clearer, more intentional. And then to step back into the world not as someone who needs it, but as someone who engages with it on their own terms. You need to understand that solitude is cyclical, not linear. You withdraw to recharge. You engage to apply what you've learned. You withdraw again to reflect and refine. You engage again with even more clarity. It's a rhythm, a dance between inner work and outer expression. And if you break that rhythm, if you stay in one mode too long, you lose the balance that makes you effective. The hermit who never leaves the cave becomes irrelevant. The socialite who never reflects becomes shallow. The power is in the oscillation, in knowing when to withdraw and when to engage, in using solitude as fuel, not as an escape. So how do you walk that line? How do you make sure that your solitude is empowering you, not imprisoning you? The answer is simple, but not easy. Intention. You need to know why you're choosing solitude. Are you retreating to heal, to think, to create, to recharge? Or are you retreating because you're afraid? Afraid of rejection, afraid of failure, afraid of being seen, afraid of being judged, afraid of not being enough. If your solitude has a purpose, it's powerful. If it's just avoidance, it's a slow death. Home should be your fortress, not your prison. It should be the place where you sharpen your mind, refine your vision, build your strength, and then you step out. Not because the world demands it, but because you choose it. You engage selectively. You show up intentionally. You connect with the people who matter in ways that add value to your life. You don't waste time on shallow interactions, empty networking, or meaningless noise. You protect your peace, but you don't hide behind it. This is the balance. This is mastery. Let me give you some practical frameworks for maintaining this balance. First, set clear intentions for your alone time. Don't just stay home because it's easier. Decide what you're using that time for. Are you working on a project? Are you processing emotions? Are you learning a new skill? Are you simply resting because your body needs it? Whatever it is, name it. Because when you name your intention, you transform passive isolation into active solitude. Second, maintain at least one meaningful connection. You don't need 100 friends, but you need at least one person you can be real with. Someone who knows you beyond the surface. Someone you can call when you need to process something out loud. Someone who won't let you disappear completely. That connection keeps you tethered to humanity. It reminds you that vulnerability isn't weakness. That being seen, truly seen, is actually a gift. Third, set a regular engagement ritual. This doesn't have to be big. Maybe it's a weekly coffee with a friend. Maybe it's a monthly meetup with people in your field. Maybe it's volunteering once a week. The point is to create a structure that prevents you from drifting too far into isolation. Something that gently pulls you back into the world before you forget how to navigate it. Fourth, monitor your self-talk. This is crucial. Pay attention to the stories you tell yourself about why you're staying home. If you're saying things like, "People are the worst," "Everyone's fake," "I'm better off alone," those are red flags. Not because those feelings aren't valid, but because they're turning isolation into identity. You're building walls instead of boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. Walls are prison. Boundaries say, "I choose when to engage, and with whom." Walls say, "I'm safer if I never engage at all." One is power, the other is fear. Fifth, challenge yourself regularly. Set small goals that require you to leave your comfort zone, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to prove to yourself that you still can. Send that message you've been overthinking. Attend that event you've been avoiding. Have that conversation you've been postponing, not because you have to, but because staying in control of your life means not letting fear make your decision. Use solitude to sharpen your mind, then return to the world and cut through the noise. That's the difference between someone who's empowered by solitude and someone who's trapped by it. One uses it as fuel. The other uses it as an excuse. One withdraws to grow stronger. The other withdraws to avoid growing at all. And here's the beautiful part. When you master this balance, you become magnetic. Not in a loud, attention-seeking way, but in a quiet, powerful way. People sense that you're not desperate for connection, that you're not performing for validation, that you're comfortable in your own skin. And that comfort, that self-sufficiency, that's incredibly attractive. Because most people are so needy for external validation that they'll latch onto anyone who seems like they don't need it. You become like water in a desert, rare, valuable, sought after, not because you're trying to be, but because you've done the inner work that most people avoid. You've sat with yourself long enough to know yourself, and that self-knowledge radiates. So now, I want you to think, really think, not the surface-level thinking you do while scrolling through social media, but the deep, honest thinking that only happens when you're willing to confront the truth. Which type are you? Are you the wounded survivor, using solitude to heal and rebuild after life knocked you down? Maybe you've been hurt so many times that home is the only place you feel safe. Maybe you're giving yourself permission to recover, to process, to become whole again. If that's you, I want you to know, your healing is valid. Take the time you need, but also remember, healing has a direction. Make sure you're moving towards something, not just away from pain. Are you the true introvert, protecting your energy because you know yourself well enough to honor how you're wired? Maybe you've stopped apologizing for needing alone time. Maybe you've built a life that respects your natural rhythm instead of fighting it. If that's you, I want you to know, your boundaries are beautiful. Keep honoring them, but also remember, even introverts need connection. Deep connection, quality connection, but connection nonetheless. Don't let your boundaries become walls. Are you the creative hermit, retreating into your mind to birth ideas that the world hasn't seen yet? Maybe you're working on something in secret. Maybe you're protecting your creative space like it's sacred. Maybe people think you're antisocial, but really you're just focused. If that's you, I want you to know, your work matters. Keep creating, keep protecting that space. But also remember, even masterpieces need to be shared eventually. Don't let perfectionism or fear keep your work hidden forever. The world needs what you're creating. Or are you the observer of chaos, refusing to let the noise of the world disrupt your inner peace? Maybe you've realized that most social situations drain more than they give. Maybe you've curated your environment so carefully that everything else feels chaotic by comparison. Maybe you've achieved a level of mental clarity that most people never experience. If that's you, I want you to know, your discernment is a gift. Keep protecting your peace. But also remember, total isolation from chaos means total isolation from life. Sometimes you need to engage with the mess to make a difference in it. Maybe you're a mix. Maybe you've been all four at different stages of your life. The survivor after a breakup, the introvert during exam season, the creative hermit when working on a passion project, the observer when you just needed a break from everyone's drama. And that's okay. That's actually beautiful, because it means you're adaptable. It means you understand that solitude isn't one size fits all. It means you can tap into different modes depending on what you need. But here's the question that really matters. Am I using solitude as a tool, or am I hiding? Am I gaining clarity, or am I spiraling? Am I preparing to re-engage, or am I slowly disappearing? Am I growing in this space, or am I just comfortable? Am I healing, or am I avoiding? Am I creating, or am I consuming? Am I recharging, or am I hiding? These are the questions that separate power from paralysis, and only you can answer them. But here's what I know for certain. Solitude, when used correctly, is one of the most powerful forces you have access to. It's where you strip away the bullshit, where you face yourself without distraction, where you reclaim your mind from a world that's constantly trying to colonize it. The world feeds on distraction. The wise feed on silence. And if you can master that silence, if you can turn it into fuel instead of fear, you'll become someone who doesn't need the crowd to feel alive. You'll become someone who moves through the world with intention, clarity, and an unshakable sense of self. Someone who understands that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means being free. Free from the need for constant validation. Free from the pressure to perform. Free to build the life you actually want, instead of the life everyone else expects from you. Free to say no without guilt. Free to say yes without obligation. Free to exist on your own terms. And that freedom, that's the real power. That's what most people spend their entire lives chasing without realizing it's found in the one place they're afraid to look, within themselves. So I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me which type you are. The wounded survivor, the true introvert, the creative hermit, the observer of chaos. Or maybe you're walking that thin line right now, trying to figure out if your solitude is serving you or trapping you. Share your story. Be honest, because I guarantee you, someone else reading this is going through the exact same thing. And maybe your comment will be the thing that helps them understand themselves better. Let's build a community of people who understand that peace isn't weakness, that silence isn't surrender, that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. A community that doesn't shame solitude or glorify constant socializing. A community that understands nuance, that respects different ways of being in the world, that honors the fact that we all need different things at different times. If this resonated with you, hit that like button, not just because it helps the algorithm, though it does, but because it's a way of saying, I see myself in this, and I'm not alone. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content that goes deep instead of staying surface level. Content that challenges you to think differently, to question the narratives society feeds you, to build a life that's authentically yours, not a copy of what everyone else is doing. And protect your peace, because in a world this loud, it's rarer than ever. Don't let anyone shame you for needing silence. Don't let anyone guilt you for protecting your energy. Don't let anyone convince you that their way of living is the only valid way. Remember, you don't owe the world your presence. You owe yourself your clarity. And sometimes, the only way to find that clarity is to step back, shut the door, and listen to the silence. Not the silence that's empty and lonely, but the silence that's full of possibility. The silence where you can finally hear your own thoughts without the interference of 1,000 other voices. The silence where you can figure out who you actually are beneath all the roles you play. The silence where you can build the foundation for the life you actually want to live. Because in that silence, you'll find something the noise could never give you. You'll find yourself, not the version of you that performs for others, not the version that contorts to fit expectations, not the version that's constantly seeking approval, but the real you, the one who's been waiting patiently beneath all that noise, the one who knows what you really want, the one who has the answers you've been searching for everywhere else. That version of you is worth finding. That version of you is worth protecting. That version of you deserves the space to breathe, to grow, to exist without compromise. So give yourself that space, not forever, not as an escape, but as a tool, as a practice, as a sacred ritual in a world that's forgotten the value of silence. And when you're ready, when you've done the inner work, when you've gained the clarity, when you've remembered who you are, step back into the world, not as someone who needs it, but as someone who's choosing to engage with it, on your terms, in your time, with your boundaries intact. That's mastery, that's power, that's freedom, and that's what this is all about.